All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are going to talk about something you and I use literally every single day, but probably don't think much about: money. I mean, where did this stuff even come from? We're going to dig into that using some key ideas from Adam Smith to see how we humans cracked one of the biggest puzzles of all: how to trade with each other. So, let's just start with a thought experiment. Picture a world completely without money: no cash, no cards, no Venmo, nothing. Let's say you're a fantastic baker, right? You make the best bread in town. But how do you get, everything else? Shoes, clothes, a place to live? How could a society possibly work like that? Well, once we started specializing, becoming bakers and brewers and blacksmiths, we had to trade. It's the only way. But the simplest way to do that, just swapping goods for goods, what we call barter, yeah, that system hits a massive, crippling wall almost immediately. And Adam Smith just nailed it. He said that this early system of exchange was, and I quote, very much clogged and embarrassed in its operations. I love that phrasing, clogged and embarrassed. It wasn't a slick, efficient machine. It was clumsy, it was super difficult, and a lot of the time it just failed. So let's break down why. Okay, so check out this classic example from Smith. You've got a butcher, right? He's got a bunch of extra meat he needs to get rid of. And along come a baker and a brewer, and they're like, we'd love some of that meat. Perfect, right? Well, not so fast. All they have to offer in return is bread and beer. The problem? Our butcher's already got all the bread and beer he needs. So what happens? Nothing. No trade can be made. The whole system just seizes up. This massive headache has a name. It's called the double coincidence of wants. It's a bit of a mouthful, but the idea is simple. For a barter to happen, not only do I have to want what you have, but you have to want what I have at the exact same time and place. Think about the odds of that happening over and over again. It's basically impossible to build an economy on that. So, to get around this ridiculous inconvenience, people naturally started looking for a workaround. They started thinking, okay, what if I kept something on hand? Some kind of common good that pretty much everybody would be willing to accept, no matter what. And man, did they get creative. You see all sorts of things being used as a kind of proto-money. In some places, it was cattle. In others, salt. You've got dried codfish in Newfoundland, tobacco in Virginia. Smith even tells this amazing story about a village in Scotland where a guy would go to the bar and pay for a beer with nails. Can you imagine? These were, let's be honest, the first really awkward attempts at solving the problem. But here's the thing. While these solutions were clever, they really just swapped one big problem for a bunch of new, equally annoying ones. I mean, sure, a cow is valuable, and that helps with the coincidence of wants thing. But how exactly do you make change for a cow when all you want to buy is a loaf of bread? You can't just chop off a leg, and you're not exactly going to carry a cow around in your pocket, are you? It's for all these practical reasons that, as Adam Smith pointed out, pretty much every society on Earth, for what he called irresistible reasons, eventually landed on one particular category of stuff that just worked better than anything else. And that was metals. And why metals? Well, it really just came down to simple, practical advantages. Look, metal doesn't spoil or die, right? Your savings won't rot. Plus, and this is a huge one, you can divide it up. You can shave off a little piece to make exact change for that loaf of bread, and it doesn't lose its value. You can even melt all the little pieces back together into a big one. They were just way, way better for the job. But hold on, we're not quite there yet. Using raw chunks of metal, like bars of silver or copper, was a massive improvement, for sure, but it was still kind of clunky. And even worse, it opened the door to a whole new world of fraud. And this is what leads us to the next big leap. A truly genius solution that finally cracked the code and unlocked commerce in a way nothing had before. And it's an invention that, in one form or another, we're still using right now. So there were two big hurdles left. First, you had the sheer pain of having to weigh out the metal for every single purchase. Imagine carrying scales with you everywhere you go. But the second problem was even trickier: assaying. How could you, an average person, be sure that the lump of gold someone was giving you was actually pure gold, and not just a cheap metal plated with a thin layer? You'd basically have to be an expert in metals just to go shopping without getting cheated. Okay, so to stop all this fraud and just to make life easier for everyone, governments finally stepped in. They said, look, we need a trusted third party here. And they created an institution that would officially certify the quality and quantity of the metal for everybody. We know this today as the Mint. And what the Mint did was brilliant.
It took a piece of metal and put a public stamp on it. And that stamp, that created the coin. A coin is basically just a promise, a guarantee from the government that says this piece of metal has this specific weight and this specific purity. All of a sudden, you didn't need your scales anymore. You didn't need to know anything about metallurgy. You could just count. It was an absolutely revolutionary game changer for trade. But, just when it seems like the system is finally perfect, a brand new problem pops up. And this one was insidious. The very same people who are supposed to guarantee the value of the money, the rulers, the state, they quickly figured out that they had the power to cheat the system. And this is where Smith gets pretty critical. He says that the avarice and injustice of princes led them to abuse the public's trust. What does he mean? Well, rulers started to secretly shave off a little bit of the gold or silver from each coin before they minted it. They would mix in cheaper metals, but keep the coin's official value the same. This is called debasement, and it's basically a hidden tax. And if you want a really jaw-dropping example of this, just look at the Roman ass coin. When it started, it contained a full Roman pound of copper, a solid, heavy coin. But over time, through this process of debasement, it was whittled down and down and down until it contained just a tiny fraction of that, only 1/24 of its original metal content. The coin was a ghost of its former self. Now, this wasn't just some abstract financial trickery. This had real-world consequences. It was a massive and pretty sneaky transfer of wealth. Think about it. If you were a debtor, this was great news. You could pay back your old debts with these new, cheaper, less valuable coins. But if you were a creditor, if you were the one who had saved your money and lent it out, you were absolutely ruined. You were getting repaid with money that was worth a tiny fraction of what you originally lent. So this whole incredible story, from clumsy bartering all the way to these debased coins, it really pushes us to ask a much bigger, more philosophical question. It's a question Adam Smith himself wrestled with. What is value? What does that word even mean? And he realized you have to break it down into two different kinds. And this leads us to his famous water-diamond paradox. Think about this for a second. What's more useful, more essential to human life than water? Nothing, right? We literally can't live without it. But what can you buy with it? Almost nothing. Its exchange value is incredibly low. On the other hand, you have a diamond. It's pretty useless, practically speaking, but its power to purchase other goods, its exchange value, is absolutely massive. How can that be? And that leaves us with a really profound final thought. The story of where money comes from isn't just a neat historical tale about solving a practical problem. It shows us that money has never really been about the metal itself. It's a technology, a social technology that is built entirely on a foundation of trust. And so its history really forces us to ask a couple of really big questions. What do we as a society decide is truly valuable? And maybe more importantly, who do we trust to protect that value?